There was the last time I ever went to my house with my mother. And all she had was a little stool and a bed. And there was nothing left of her. There's nothing left. And the yearning of change of him started there. Subhanallah, this is how some people really hit an epiphany. And I find it too difficult. And I pray that Allah grant our parents health that we don't have to ever do that. I really do. I really pray unto God that any parent is never given to, and it's not that we wouldn't honor them in that regards, but just the way how he was to describe his mother's feelings. I can only imagine what a parent would feel if her child has to do the very same thing that she would do. And that's very demeaning for them. And so that is basically what his youth was like, his childhood. Then his youth. When they migrated to Pakistan, his heart was yearning, that he said that this mass exodus, in fact, this is probably one of the largest immigration in the history of humanity, that more than 1 million people went from one land and traversed all of India to come to another piece of land. And he said that from the very get-go, at the infancy of this nation, that the people that came were leeches and were ripping out or milking Pakistan from the very get-go. And he says that when I saw this, it hurt my heart that we came to this land for opportunities. We didn't come to this land to exploit it. But that's what people were doing, and that's what the corrupt minds were doing. And I could never accept that. And I made it a resolution in my mind to change that by any way I could. Because how can we expect a nation to prosper if the very nation that's supposed to give us security, we're taking security away? That we're leeching off of it. And we're not allowing any progress to take place. And that's what the corruption was happening from the very get-go. People were cutting the pockets and stealing money from the very get-go. And that was a big problem. And that hurt him a lot. He said that it pained me to see what Muhammad Ali Jinnah and Allama Iqbal and Fatma Jinnah and all these people who created it, even up from Maulana Abdul Kalam Azad or Sir Sayyid Ahmad, all these people who envisioned this utopia, this oasis of a land for Muslims, how it was usurped by their own Muslims. How it was destroyed and is being destroyed even to this day by our own people. That this land was supposed to be a land of freedom. Pakistan, what? Land of the pure. But the actions truly are contrary of that. And it was then, after his death of his mother, and when he was, obviously there was a lot of time elapsed. When he was 23 years of old, he opened a dispensary. He tried different things. He never liked school. And he had a little shop on the side as well. But he just realized that this change that he was yearning for wasn't coming through it. And he wanted to always help humanity. And he always did. Even when he didn't start his I can't even say the word, philanthropy. Before he started this global philanthropy, that he still always helped people. He was always known as a person that if you have a problem, go to Edhi. If you have a problem, go to Edhi. If you have a problem, that's the way it was. So in 1951, he opened a dispensary with just a couple thousand rupees in a place in Karachi called Mitadar. And he opened it there. And what he would do is that he would give free medicine to the poor people. Doesn't matter what it was. And further, he devoted his life that every night when he would shut that dispensary, he would sleep on the bench outside. So that in the middle of the night, if there was someone who has a need, they could wake me up and I could go and help them. He spent decades, a decade at least, before he married Bilqis, his wife. That's how he used to live. That he would live outside on the bench, he would sleep on the bench. So that if there's a brethren or a sister who is in need, I'm always there for them. And that's how he lived his life. This is how he devoted. This is what you call the epitome of serving humanity. That he said, oh brother, I'm there for you whenever you need me. He opened up, he started with that, and then he began with first having a doctor on salary, and they taught him all the stuff of how to treat wounds and so on and so forth. And it was essentially 1959 or 58, there was a big influenza outbreak in Pakistan. And him and his group, they set up makeshift tents on the periphery of Karachi. And they were able to immunize people at a mass scale. And when people realized that, they saw the effectiveness of this man, they started donating to him in abundance. But a thing that I noticed that seems to be human nature, which is so destructive, is the concept of jealousy. He goes that I devoted my life for the sake of humanity and not for my own will and not for my own fame. But I always had people who were jealous and who always wanted to shut my operations down. He said always. People always wanted to. That's because I would always speak the truth. And I realized that for me to fight, in fact, people would say that Edhi was sleeping with women, or Edhi was taking advantage of people. He was doing this and that. And sometimes people would hold back on their contributions. And that was because these businessmen, all they cared about was public recognition. He goes, when people used to donate money to me, once this businessman donated money to me, 100,000 rupees, he said, just watch, this man after this donation today, he's going to come and ask for it back. And he goes, that's exactly what happened. That these people who would present a front that they cared for society, they never did. And he said that I came to the realization that the only way to prove that I'm sincere is through my own hard work, is through my own credibility. Everyone can say anything they want against me, but they will be able to see my work and see that this man actually is truthful to what he says. And that's what he did. In his the Mitadar complex in that area, it was filled with garbage. He said, I spent months on my own that I would go, pick up the garbage from the gutter, pick it on my back, and go to the dumpster and throw it. To the final point that it was clean, and I never asked anyone. I never asked anyone for help because I wanted first to show how to show how work is done, and first to break my ego and do it solely for Allah. I did not want any person to help me until my intentions were purified solely for the sake of God. And when they were, and then when people would be inspired, I would be fine with taking their help. So he continued with life, and he's continued his job, and he opened a maternity ward. He opened a ward for mentally retarded people, schools for girls, battered shelters for battered women, blood transplant areas, a cancer hospital, a place where 10,000 people all across Pakistan, 10,000 people a day eat free food at the Edhi centers. He's established over 300 centers, and in fact his organization is regarded as one of the best welfare systems upon this earth. There is no welfare system even in Sweden and the Scandinavian countries that are even comparable to Edhi's foundation. He has established a network of every 25 kilometers throughout Pakistan. There is an Edhi place, an Edhi center for someone to get help. So much so that he said that 75% of all the accidents or all the traumas and catastrophes that take place, my organization takes care of it. I get 6,000 calls a day for my ambulance service. And he has a Guinness Book of World Record for the largest private ambulance service upon this earth. He has a Guinness Book of World Record for the longest continuous working schedule. Like, he's never taken a break. He has a record for that in the Guinness Book. And I think that's probably 30, 40 years. He hasn't taken a break at all. Continuously work from morning to night. Morning to night. And suffice to say that this is how this man has devoted his life to the cause of humanity. When the wars happened in Israel, he went to Palestine on his own with a knapsack with $70,000. When he went to the camp of Sabra and Shatila, these are the camps where Ariel Sharon committed war crimes against the Palestinians. When he went in, he gave them money. The Palestinians there, the women and the orphans, the widows and the orphans began to cry. They said, "Oh, my beloved brother, you are the first human being to actually come to our aid." That's what they said. And he traveled thousands of miles to go help in Palestine. He said, "Oh, my beloved sisters, all I can ask for you is to pray for my country and pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protects it." He was the first person there in Palestine. He was in Somalia himself to help out in Mogadishu when in 1992. In fact, he's been to Bosnia. He was in Beirut when the incursion and the occupation And this is when he was 2 years ago. So he was 79 years old. He was 79 years old. He went to Beirut, to the front lines where the Israelis and the Lebanese Hezbollah armies were fighting, and he was helping the poor people. He helped 10,000 human beings and created a compound and gave food for 10,000 people. Right now, when the siege took place in Palestine, the Egyptian government banned him from going to help in Palestine. He said that I tried with all my fervor to go and help in Palestine, but I've returned back to Pakistan as a